Shooters are the kind of games that everyone wants to play, and there's a huge selection of titles to play everywhere. And for this reason they may follow the same formula. First person, action, and the characteristic that they use to be so quick. But in 2014 came out this thing. The first version of My Friend Pedro, MFP, which was a flash game about a mercenary who has a friend named Pedro, and the reason why he was a banana never was explained. Think because it is fun. The game is really short and easy, but it served to plant the basis of what we will see 5 years later. Original flash gameplay about a guy who is a killing machine. In general, the game has more quality than what we expect from a flash game, but it has some mistakes. The most obvious starting that the movements of the main character are so slow for a game that is supposed to be an action one, and the physics of him is kind of weird that it feels like it is full of air being so slow when he falls. But out of it is fun. In 2019 came out the definitive edition of My Friend Pedro, published by Devolver Digital Entertainment and Dead Toast Entertainment, with better graphics, better mechanics, a better soundtrack, and last but not least a version of incredibly stylish, killing enemies with the grace of a flamenco. So this is My Friend Pedro. As in the first version of the flash game, the main character wakes up in a room, remembering nothing, and with his friend Pedro, character who will explain the context of the situation and try to tell a story that by itself it's underdeveloped, but I'll talk about it later. The first good and main aspect of the game is the gameplay. It is frenetic, excepting some levels that get boring quickly. But if it wasn't satisfying to kill enemies with fancy moves, try with the focus mode, which allows you to freeze the time for some time for doing more handsome plays. But it also has a big problem because it glitches constantly and your character finishes making weird moves that in the most occasion will make you receive a lot of damage. But it is only that. A good include was dodging bullets. You cannot do it all the time, just like 3 seconds, but it makes the experience less stressful and has interesting things, like throwing things at enemies like basketball balls, knives, frying pans, skateboards, is not for nothing, but the levels where you can ride one are just brutal, or you kick organs. It has a good selection of weapons that are necessary for some part of the game, but they are not infinite unlike the first weapons, the pistols. They have counted bullets, obligating you to make every shoot counts and play slow but safe. The music of it, which is a kind of industry electronic music that helps the ambientation of the entire gameplay. I say this because once I have to play soundless, and I have to admit that it is not the same. As well, the sound effects improved and they help you to understand what's happening. The camera is put on a place where you have a panoramic view of all the stage for helping you to decide what weapon you will use and how you will use it. The weapons are selected in a way that you feel free to use depending on the map or situation. You can carry 2 of the first weapons, so you can divide the shot, and another interesting mechanic was that you can kick enemies when you are close to them, and also there are explosives, and even a weapon has a grenade launcher. The most interesting mechanic, if I have to select one, is that with some objects you can ricochet the bullets. It is a no sense, but we are talking about a game with a banana main character. And a good add-on was that once you finish the game you can unlock modifiers which are funny, and it is a good challenge to beat the game with a modifier enabled. But if there's something bad I got to say about the game is that it feels repetitive, not only in the gameplay formula but also in playing. This feels like a copy and paste in platforms. Yeah, some enemies are literally the same but in a different part of the map holding a different weapon. The game tries to make something different at every level, but it stops being something new to be part of the formula very quickly. In other words, the level where you unlock a new weapon feels new and fresh because you will need it at level, but at the next level is gushing and you use it just if you want. I personally liked really much the levels of the section of the internet where the only enemy is lasers, and if you activate them will appear other enemies, but the most brutal level is at the end of the first chapter, where you are on a motorcycle killing everyone on the road, and also the end level of the second chapter. It's a shame that we cannot say the same about the last 2 bosses. The third boss is just generic and the last one is just more generic. But it's a spoiler, so I can't talk about that. Then another thing I can complain about is some textures which not finish charging and others that charge but they lack detail. I know that graphics are not everything, but look at the enemies. They have an amateur quality. Also, the game is too short. I expect at least 6 hours of gameplay, but you can only play 2 hours if you do not fail at every moment. Also, a thing that I realized is that the purpose of the leaderboard, which appears when you finish a level, is just to motivate you to play it and enter at the top. I think it will be more gratificant to receive things for having some of the scores, but let's not talk about the price. The game costs $20, so I don't think the price is justified. But in my own opinion, the worst part of the entire game is the story, as I mentioned before. I know that the main purpose of the game is not telling a story and focusing on the gameplay, but it tries to tell one, so it should be a good one. Yeah, I cannot expect a Red Dead Redemption 2, but at least something entertaining, because the story is so superficial. It explains what happens with our protagonist and why he does the things he does, and just a bit of the world where the game occurs, but the lack of dialogue and fast animations, and I suppose that they're kind of cinematics, but per se they don't act like that. This makes the story hard to understand, and at the end, you feel that you listen to a story which only exists because it has to. Does anyway this not make the game bad at all? The good aspects are more and most significant than the bad ones. I don't think is the best you can buy for its price, but it's a game I can recommend genuinely. Because of its gameplay and its identity, it offers another experience that escapes from the shooters like Call of Duty or PUBG, and that's a thing that not everyone can reach. So if you have to choose between My Friend Pedro and an Activision game, buy My Friend Pedro. Hey, this is the end. I hope you liked it. Subscribe to this channel. Just if you want. Bye.